All those guys have those.
Yeah, Gandalf.
The troll. What are the
I think I know the troll.
troll? You gotta pick it. Just keep that to name.
Does he have puppy hair?
Yeah, because there's one I call Gandalf.
Uh-huh.
Gandalf the Grey.
Following the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Committee, the February 1st order at 5 p.m. And we start with the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Rob Waltman. Vice Chair Daniel Cunningham. Toba Gerlander. Everett Dowling. Lehua Anderson. Brennan Polito. Randall Beach. Mike Moran. Cody Nimitz. Wayne Nishiki. Kyoki Felser. Jennifer Sullivan. She's excused. Thank you. Brian Ward. Before we get started, commissioners or committee members, yesterday you received a draft schedule for the advisory committee to complete its review by the end of May. This is a 1-month extension past the 6-month deadline. The department is concerned that repeated changes to the draft schedule as well as unplanned recessing of meetings will not allow the CPAC to fulfill its duties required by the Maui County Code, which is to listen to public testimony, review the draft plan, and develop recommendations. To complete the review, the department recommends following the draft schedule, which includes opportunity for public input and testimony and days scheduled to catch up. I think we're all on the same page that we want to complete a strong and implementable community plan in a timely fashion. And we do have some suggestions for keeping the meetings moving. Just 3. 1, during testimony, focusing on clarifying questions. 2, implementing a 3-minute time limit for when members are speaking, similar to what the county council does. And 3, that the department can work with you to draft language if you want to share ideas with us for policies or actions ahead of time. So please think about it, because I know we all would like to get through this as quickly as we can, but still have a quality product. So if we can stay on schedule with the draft we sent out yesterday, that would be really, really helpful. Thank you.
Hindi na may nalalo sa kumikilala ang kaya na Maui na hindi naman na Maui kapo kaya na mo lalo sa Maui may kaya na Maui kung mo pa ko ikiyay ito ka ang na ikang tulad na ikang na kapo kung ang ikabay may utama ikay ikabay ikimay. So this is a recess meeting. We are now accepting in-person testimony. However, we will take into account past testimony on top of the voice announcement as well as past and written testimony on the spot. And today's introduction is by Daniel.
So, my kako, CPAC members, I'm going to just share a little bit about my Moku how with you. My father, Daniel, was born in Lahaina, Luna, and his father, Clinton, was the principal of Kukukoliki Plantation School back in the 1920s. And Clinton had 14 children. My dad was number 4. And he had 56 grandchildren, so I have 55 first cousins on the Kaneohe side. And my father's mother is married. She's from Kaupo. If you've been to the cemetery behind Uli Aloha Church in Kaupo, some of my ancestors are buried in that cemetery. My mother is from Mokupuni Okiawe. Her mother, Abigail, was from Honolulu, Black Sand Beach. She was a school teacher. And my mother's father, Julian, was of Paniolo. He was a ranch manager for 45 years, horse and cattle ranching. And so both my parents are Hapahali and Hapahali, half Hawaiian, and the other half is a fusion of many ethnicities. My parents met at the old airport on Lagoon Drive in Honolulu before the airport renewal was built. They met in the cafeteria. They would sit down and have lunch. My dad and asked my mom out for a first date, and when my dad knocked on the door, my mom opened it, and she couldn't see anybody until she looked down. She had never seen my dad standing up before, and didn't realize how much shorter he was than her. So she's about 5'9", and my dad was 5'4". But anyway, they got married and raised a family on Oahu, where I lived. And then my dad moved back to Maui in the mid-70s, 1970s. And I lived where they lived, the house they built. My parents both passed on. I have a pretty simple philosophy when it comes to what we're doing here today. And my guiding value is Lahaina, love of Lahaina, that which takes or feeds us, love of Lahui, and love of Ohana. And Ohana can mean family, but also can mean your extended community. So that's kind of my operating value. Right? When I'm here in Sika, I just feel wherever you live, here in Maui, for example, in South Maui, that you have a moral obligation of kubiana to malama Lahaina, to know your resources in the area where you live, and to take care of those life systems which provide us life. And to be a good citizen beyond the lahui, and to take care of your ohana community by community service. And you're all doing that right here, volunteers providing community service. So aloha aina for me is a core value. Mahalo for the opportunity.
Thank you for that. And we have 2 left. One of them is Wayne, and the other one is Vernon. Is it Vernon? One of the 2. They're right. Okay. So one of you guys will do it next. No. You already did it? Oh, I forgot. Okay, in that case, we have one left, and that's Wayne. So Wayne, you're going to introduce yourself next time. Not this time, next time. Okay?
Next time.
Okay. And we are live streaming again on Facebook to the KCA web Facebook page. But in 2 weeks, most likely, we'll be live streamed on the Akakuin site. So in our schedule, which is in the binder, next week, February 8th, is an off day. So there's no meeting scheduled for February 8th. Okay. It is. I have it right here. And so, for that reason, a couple months ago, I scheduled travel for myself to see the kids. It's the only day which is not the only day which is not booked for a meeting. So it means that next week either Daniel will be the meeting chair or me.
I'm sorry, Chair, but you were referring to a draft meeting October 17th. This schedule has been updated every month, and it does have the 8th scheduled as a meeting. So we do have plans for a meeting at the Maui Center on the 8th, and if you're not able to make it, we do have a vice chair that can run the meeting. So
I scheduled this a couple months ago based on the schedule at that time because I can't schedule it on a daily basis.
You should see, by not having a meeting, it puts things further back.
I can chair the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, so on to Board for policies.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
question. Have we determined when we're going to have these extra meetings? I'm anxious to hear us make a policy on the extra meetings that we were talking about. So far, no action.
We have the results from the roll call.
So, Chair, thank you. The general consensus seems to be to not have additional meetings during, more than one meeting a week. So, the email that we sent out yesterday with the draft schedule extends the schedule 1 month to the end of May. 1 month. So, still having meetings on Wednesday nights only, once a week, Wednesday nights only, for 1 additional month. So, does that answer your question?
Are you saying it's achievable?
I think it's achievable if we can stick to the schedule, yes.
Okay, so last time we left off, we finished 2.4.4, and we did not start on 2.4.5. All the changes which I proposed were all sent out in advance. Matter of fact, I sent out last week. But we did get some new testimony from Robin Knox, and I think most of it was really Robin Knox is the South Maui expert on watershed management out from the high. And I really want to take into account her suggestions. So I will be suggesting for she can't make it because she's not able to. Physically not able to make it this week. So the first one, 2.4.5 says coaches and this one was the we'll say I think was from the data good. 2.4.5 coaches as identified in the map of figure 3.17. Page 106 of this plan must remain open space and no new permanent structures may be developed in or within 100 feet of the top of the bank of identified coaches, unless no impact development strategies are implemented to prevent stormwater runoff. And then I think you guys have all received the testimony by David Good, and which includes 100-year runoff, not runoff, 100-year flow estimates for all the major coaches. And Robin was kind of in the opposite, in the other direction. She says just remove the unless no impact development strategies. In other words, make it across the board policy. And Robin also says identify what we mean by coaches. So, go ahead.
Thank you. My apologies for the late delivery. Sorry, Jackie, I ran way past you. I need to grab a pink one back, which I can grab after. But I have some suggested language changes for our policy in the sheet 82. So based on looking at the various maps that were shared for the hydrology of the area, my suggestion is to include those that are included as streams on the Dar stream layer. So splitting the difference a little bit between the original, which was including perhaps more than what was intended for this policy, to be clearly protecting gulches, to actually protecting each of the major drainages in the area.
Yeah, I compared the areas, streams and flows to Department of Aquatic Resources map of streams. And one difference is that he had a large flow in Keokea as a separate stream from Waimahaiha, and he had very little flow in Waimahaiha. But I think what you have here and what the Department of Aquatic Resources says is more accurate. So, you're welcome to make a motion to adopt the text as you have written it here and we can discuss it.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to adopt the text with the two changes that are in blue on your page that is pink under 2.7.5. And I have included the language that accommodated Jordan's comments about the need to provide an easement for roadways and utilities.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Daniel. Mike, could you? Okay, second by Mike. Okay, discussion. Yeah, good.
I think we should have Kamaole Gulch in. Do you know? Folks know where Kamaole Gulch is? Raise your hand. Okay. I think we should include that gulch.
Just FYI, it's not included in the Department of Aquatic Resources map. I don't know why. I don't know what the criteria is. It could be just, whether it's flows similar time or not.
Sorry, couldn't hear you.
I don't know what the criteria that the Department of Aquatic Resources uses to decide whether or not to include a stream. It could be that it's how often it flows.
Oh, it's a major gulch. A lot of water that flows through that. It outlets at Kamole 1, here, Charlie Young Beach area. Goes right by, it's just south of the Kihei District Police Station.
Someone making as a proposal. Oh, they will have.
It's in David's testimony, if I'm correct, that he's added Kamole on it as well. So to support what Daniel is saying, so it's on David's testimony as well. So.
Sure, if I may.
Go ahead.
So, this document references the Kihei Drainage Master Plan, which identifies all the gulches in.
Sorry, I can't hear. Sorry.
So this community plan document references the Kihei Drainage Master Plan, which already delineates all the gulches in Kihei, or South Maui. And so I would recommend referring to that document since it is a supporting document of the plan. And if there's drainage ways that people have identified that are missing, then certainly add those in. But I think we should stay consistent with the resources we're relying on, as opposed to bringing in, additional qualification or ways to describe gulches. Because again, the drainage master plan went through and not only identified all of the drainage ways, but quantified how much stormwater is estimated to come out of the 100-year flows from those drainage ways. Thank you, Chair.
When?
While Mr. Molina is here, you know, this past week, we've seen the South Maui Road area impacted by the Maui runoff. And when I looked at the damage that it does, my prayers out to the, by the way, the firefighter Damaran who's in the hospital right now. I hope none of this happens to any one of us living in South Maui. This firefighter, first responder, would truck 800 yards, 8 football fields, in the storm drainage. And I'm surprised he's alive. When I look at the drainage channelization that the county has done, you guys undersize all these basins. That's why they overflow, Mr. Lomila. When is the county going to admit that we've got undersized drainage basins? Therefore, as Matthew Fair took a picture of this low by the ABC store, the drainage basins fill up with logs and timber. Then they overflow to the adjacent landowners. I feel like a construction worker wheeling barrels of mud in South Kiev when our government isn't doing the right thing. Mr. Molina, are the drainage basins undersized, and do we have to add language as to how we attack the flooding in South Maui?
Thank you, Mr. Nishiki. So, yes, the Kihei Drainage Master Plan calls out all our culverts that are undersized. That's what the plan does. We do not have any basins, regional basins in Kihei. That is part of the problem. And so one of the recommendations of the master plan is to look at Maka retention basins to reduce the amount of water coming down through the developed area where we don't have enough space in a lot of places to make the room we need for the stormwater. Further, this policy document we're working on here today is that framework that we're going to rely upon to develop those mitigations to the extent that you all, see fit and appropriate for South Maui. So, to your point, that's why we're here today, is to work on this problem.
And what is the government going to do with these problems? Now that we have them, it's going to happen. It's happened 3 times in a row. 3 storms that have overflooded the drainage basins. Thank you for your honesty. And this language that we're using, I don't think any of you are actually sincere in dealing with the problems that we have with flooding in South Maui. It's a farce. When are we going to speak up for our community? It's nice language, but the language doesn't solve the problem. Let's not make believe that we care when we don't care and do nothing about it. We almost lost a firefighter.
The reason I brought up Kahuli Gulch is because I'm very familiar with it. I liked it several times. Malka, Pihiwani Highway. Above the police station, the gulch on the north side is county land, up to a point. Below the highway, as a landscaper, I've actually helped clean sections of the gulch. And I've seen it run on several occasions. And I've seen it on South Key Road. There's a catchment or reservoir. South Key Road. Don't even know the exact term for it, but I've seen that fill up and then eventually blow out the sand dune on the beach, towards the ocean. I've seen it happen multiple times, so I know there's a lot of water that runs through it. And because of my familiarity with Kamaholi Gulch, that's why I brought it out. To call it out, maybe it's not on the KA master plan maps, but I've walked it, I've seen it, and I'm very familiar with it. You can decide whatever you want to do as far as amending the language, so I'd like to make a motion to do a friendly amendment.
Happily accept.
Mike? Brian?
So I could ask you kind of suggested that the policy that's on the page is kind of a blending of the original and what David had. Can you try to help me connect the dots, because I don't know the difference. I just want to make sure I understand why you're saying that.
Okay, so the very first policy that we had included a lot of drainages that, to David's point, might have gone beyond kind of the intent. David called out 6 waterways that sort of classified as that more major way that the water's making its way down. When I looked at the DAR map and familiarity with some of these areas, there were a few that were missing, in my opinion. But he did have Maui on there. I'm not sure why it's not on the DAR map. But like Pohakea, Waikapu, Waikoa, that whole area, it's a mess. It's part of what Wayne was just talking about, that area. Let's not miss that in what we're trying to manage now. So in that way, it's a hybrid of the two. The way that it diverges from the knowledge that he was sharing is he was proposing we have it defined more by the 100-year flood and where that would be impacting the landscape. Where I'm suggesting keeping with the more like the original intent, which was there's a benefit on those major waterways to have a buffer in and of itself, to be protective of the land use above, be protective of the open space, and be protective of the waterway below. So that's sort of like there's a coming together and diverging, which is what makes it kind of a mix. Is that clear?
What's being compared to is it's in your packet. I think it's the printout of all the gulches. So that was the original proposal. David proposed restricting that, and told us to propose a different restriction. Wayne?
If I may speak for the last time, this committee, to me, is a big shibari. Despite that, we saw what has happened 3 times in the past 4 years. And a lot of you are supposed to be born and raised here, if not lucky to be living here in Maui. And I'm just disappointed at how this committee is acting. I'm voting no on it. Amen.
Okay, so if you look at the videos and all the documentations that I've been doing,
and you look at all the condominiums in the areas where the wetlands used to be, that was our natural retention basin. So you're watching the water flow. The water just goes through all these condominiums down here, through their parking lot, cars, whatever. And I just don't see what 20% of the wetlands we have left. I don't see how this not going to repeat again. It's going to happen because of the development, and then on the county side, those our streetways became narrow in South Kenya Road. So it is what it is. It happened. How are we going to even work on those narrow ways like by Wanakai, Maui Schooner? That those are like Waipulani, but it's screening. So I don't think we can fix that, but it's just poor planning, poor development in the past, because when you look by videos, the water is not being held in those areas where those condos locate right today. So even if we fix the gulches holistically or pave them, South is going to be our way of life. I mean, that's it. Because the water still going to Honolulu Road, the county's still going to clean them up. Hilton still will clean up their area of you guys' place by Old Suda Store. And that's crazy, because even when it used to flood in the day, it never was like this. It was never messy, because it had enough area Mauka to hold enough water inland. So honestly, this is the toughest part of our discussion, and I don't think we're going to figure it out. I think we're just going to ask for grants and funding for projects and data and research, and it's going to continue. It's going to repeat. Anyway, just
maybe I'm not understanding it correctly, but it's hard for me to distinguish what cultures are more important than others. To me, I feel like all these waterways have a very important role and should all be treated a certain way, treated with the same way. And so, by choosing waterways to say, these are more significant than these, in my way of thinking, is I think they all should be treated the same way. All the cultures, even the ones that may not be named. Yeah, my thoughts.
I think Kale goes first, and everyone. Just a comment. I hope these retaining ideas that we have of Malka are carefully thought of, carefully designed, carefully researched, because that seems to be the only answer. Like Vernon was saying, this is kind of our new time, because the destruction of the wetlands, we cannot just remove those buildings and reestablish the wetlands. So these retaining systems seem to be like our only hope. I can tell you from the one I witnessed in Maui, going back to the Kanaio Street, it down doesn't hurt. I mean, they spend millions of dollars on this retainment system. If you guys are ever in Maui, please drive through Haole Street, stop at the Island Sands condominium and look Malcolm. This retainment that they built is a joke. And the simple solution to something like that was not diverting that stream. They looked at Kanaio Stream as a small little insignificant thing, but look at the damage it's causing to the reef out there. So these retainment systems, I hope, are well planned, well thought, and I hope they work.
that seems to be our only hope, yeah.
Jordan, if you were to pick one gulch to work on first in terms of implementing the master drainage plan, what gulch would you pick?
I mean, obviously, Kalanikoi is the biggest and is the most, well, between that and Waiakoa, those are kind of the two most disruptive flooding issues we got right now. Kalanikoi is more challenging because it's so much larger in terms of how much flow is calculated to come down that gulch. But yeah, those two are the top of the list because that's where every time we get shut down now.
Okay. I'm going to vote against the motion. I mean, we've had a past director of public works make recommendations. We've had the current director of public works make recommendations. They're both engineers. None of us are engineers. So I'm voting against it.
Chair, if I may, I just want to kind of help the room put some context because I feel like you guys are all trying to swallow the whole problem of stormwater through this policy. And so the suite of policies together is the management strategy. And each policy attacks a different aspect of the problem. So what I'm hearing is that you think this gulches is kind of got to fix the whole thing, really talking about just one specific aspect of the whole flooding and sediment situation. So when I read this particular policy, to me what it's saying is, I'm going to use drainage ways instead of gulches because drainage ways is more encompassing and talks about the ones that aren't just big cliffs, right? The low-lying areas is gulches, or are drainage ways as well, the wetlands part of the drainage way. So with this strategy, all I'm seeing is that when we're talking about new developments and redevelopments, we don't want them right up against the drainage ways. And we want to create this buffer of either 100 feet or the flood inundation limits so that, twofold, we create a buffer to help reduce erosion from getting into the drainage ways, but also that we have a buffer so when the drainage ways fill up, people aren't getting flooded or aren't building in the floodways. So that's kind of my take on this particular policy here, is that the idea is for new development, redevelopment around drainage ways, we want that separation from these drainage ways.
Yeah. Let me change Jordan, but because of the acoustics in the room is cavernous, it's hard to hear sometimes unless the mic's like almost up to your mouth. It kind of, I miss words that you're saying. I really want to hear what you're saying.
Okay, sorry. Second warning, got it. So what I would say for you, Daniel, is that this policy is really just one aspect that we're trying to manage when it comes to stormwater. And the way I read what I infer the intent to be is to really just create that buffer around our natural drainage ways so that we don't have a Kalanikoi where we boxed in everything and now no more room. So that's kind of the way I see this, as dealing with that aspect of the problem. We don't want to repeat how we built up right up on Waipuilani, how we built up right up on Kalanikoi. So going forward, we want to ensure that the new development and redevelopments keep that space along the drainage ways, both to create an opportunity to prevent sediment from getting in there, and then when the big rains come and it swells up, there's a safety buffer from where the development is happening. And so I would almost say that even with low impact, you shouldn't allow anything in that buffer zone, period. And what else is in this component? My other suggestion would be to use the 100-year inundation limits plus 100 feet as far as the buffer. That is because, like for the big gulches, the inundation limits is the gulch. And so you won't have a setback, you can just rely on the inundation limits. And in the low-lying areas, you probably want a bigger buffer generally anyway. Let me see. So then part of this strategy also kind of gets into the reducing stormwater, which I think should be a different policy. And we can kind of get into that later. But basically, like, the low impact development thing is really for places that don't have room to store their stormwater. And so that's generally talking about the already developed lands, the low-lying areas where you can't fill a basin, you can't do infiltration into the ground because you're already in the groundwater. And so you would promote those LID strategies as kind of an alternative to at least maximize the potential of these developments to retain their stormwater, because they're not going to have the space to meet the engineering standards that they currently have in place. So thank you.
I did not talk to Jordan ahead of time, but I did have the same thought. And right up there on the screen is this policy split into two policies. One is for redevelopment in public roadways, where it says gulches is identified in the map in figure 3.17 of this plan must remain in open space, and no new permanent structures may be developed within the 100 feet from the top. This one does not this one includes the low impact development strategies. The second one, for new developments and subdivisions, gulches must remain in open space and no new permanent structures may be developed in or within 100 feet of the top of the bank of identified gulches. So that's why it's removed the unless low impact development strategies. That's what the brackets are for.
So in terms of, just to summarize where we're at, so we have the original proposal here, which refers to the map with these gulches. We have a proposal from, we have a testimony from David Good, which has a list of only certain gulches, and then we have a motion on the floor with a specific list of streams. So those are the things we have in front of us right now. This can be proposed, but this is not a proposal from. We have a motion on the floor, basically. We need to discuss that. Get closure. Wayne?
Jared, for the last time, help you understand what you're saying. Any development marker of the highway, you're suggesting a plan.
So my recommendation is that any drainage way, not just drainage ways you call gulches, have this setback requirement of the flood, the 100-year flood inundation limits, and or this kind of policy called an additional 100 feet. So that any project that has next to a gulch or next to one drainage way is got to have that setback in there, so we don't box ourselves in like we did with Maui Lu and White Huilani. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
We need further discussion before going to a decision on the motion. Okay, since we're up, Tora.
Can I amend my own thing?
She can.
My own motion? Could we add in the language about the 100-year storm inundation zone plus an additional 100 as recommended by Director Newman?
So can Mike? Could you add that here so you can see it?
Right here, 100.
Is that aligned with your motion? Yes, okay. Okay. So since we have an indication of opposition, I would vote. All in favor? Yes. We can have more discussion if needed, yes.
I just wanted to clarify with Chair Molina. Sorry, Director Molina. I thought I heard you say something to the effect that it would be better not to have anything in the setback. Will that include roadways and utilities in this case?
Yeah, I mean, so if we want a road that crosses any of these drainage ways, we gotta put appropriate structures there. So, I mean, I guess that's why you guys are here to guide the policy about whether we're gonna cross gulches in the future and or allow us to rebuild gulch crossings. So yeah, I would request that this not pertain to infrastructure. And then just real quick about the gulches things, I still would recommend drainage ways as opposed to gulches. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Drainage ways instead of gulches, and to clarify that this does not prohibit infrastructure. Thank you.
If I might amend one more time, drainage ways as our first word, please. Does that work for you, Mike?
So I think now that we're calling out the specific gulches we're protecting, it no longer refers to figure 3.17. So that should be removed.
My assumption maybe false was that would be updated to reflect it because the plan is going to have to need, it's going to need a map that refers to this, I would think, to make it clear to people. But yeah, that should be explicit, not a tacit assumption.
So if we wanted to clarify which drainage ways, again, I would have it point to the Key Drainage Master Plan as the technical supporting document for the community plan. Thank you.
Director? Have you seen David Good's testimony?
I apologize, I have not.
Me too. How do you, at the bottom of the first page of his memo, the last paragraph, it seems like, based on the current draft, this building would be
Yeah, so that is so my recommendation is kind of the starting point based on what I gathered here, but that 100 feet is going to be, it's going to be a severe constraint. So that's kind of the policy question about how big of a buffer we want. And secondly, I can't speak exactly for this one, but what happens below the highway is the drainage channels lose definition because they get flat and they spread out. What you can do is you can define that channel either with, by improving the embankments, widening it, so that it can properly convey that 100-year flood and you know exactly where the limits of flooding will be, which can then allow you to build closer to those drainage ways. So for example, Maui Coast Hotel, which is in construction right now, has the drainage way right through the development. They are improving that channel so that it can safely pass that 100-year flow through there without flooding the property. That is currently how our drainage rules work. I think it's appropriate. Now, the policy about whether that's not, and there should be more of a buffer established, or even prohibiting improvements to natural drainage ways itself is kind of up for this body to establish a policy on. Thank you.
I'm not an engineer. The director is an engineer. David Goodwood is an engineer. So once again, I think we should be following their direction, not pretending we're engineers and coming up with these things. I'm voting against it.
Are we ready for a decision? Right?
I would say this if David was here tonight or not, but I was told many times by civil engineers reminded that David was not a civil engineer. He may have been head of the department, but he was not a civil engineer. And seemingly civil engineers felt that he didn't have the expertise that civil engineers did. So that was an opinion from several civil engineers that I heard.
Okay, so no disrespect to all the engineers in the room, but I personally lost faith in engineers. Time and time again, I've seen what they've created fail, when all along we should have been listening to Kanaka. Thank you.
Cody, you're guessing anyone? Okay, Dwayne?
I want to speak for the last time. To those of you sitting over here tonight, when the next cornerstone comes, and I hope you don't live in where I live, when the next cornerstone comes, remember what your action is tonight. And for administration, are you going to be proposing new rules to the council as a policy change? I see a elected new council member here, Tom Cook.
At this time, no, because in my opinion, I think our drainage rules are very strict and they're hard to appease. And the problems we have in PA is because there was no drainage mitigations implemented back in those days. And I guess another clarifying point is that these are natural flows that we're trying to manage. They're not all attributed to just the development contribution of these flows. So again, there's many aspects to what is contributing to our stormwater problems, and this is just one of the areas that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
So earlier, when you were talking about the drainage ways, you were saying that it would be easier to refer them to the Maui drainage plan.
Yeah, that's correct. As we call out every single one that that we're aware of, and if there's any missing, definitely add those in. But I think that's the best, easiest, and most direct document to go. This is the area we're talking about, the one right here on the plan.
So just FYI, it doesn't cover where they are covered the pool, Kapunakea. doesn't have an explicit list of coaches, so I don't think it fills the bill, but two of us does. Emma?
Jordan, does South Maui, is the key drainage, is that what you want, the drainage master plan? But that doesn't include Maui Meadows or anything south of Maui Meadows?
Yeah, that's correct. It only starts from North Kihei and ends at Kilohana. So you could almost, to that point, you could remove that reference and just say drainage ways. Because we know when plans come in, how to delineate those drainage ways. They're all mapped from the USGS maps. I believe that's where we got all our information from. So I would recommend keeping it broad so you can capture more than trying to pick a specific definition that may exclude certain things. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So would you be willing to take out, with the exception of roadways and utilities?
Not if we want to have a north-south connector, or any way to actually come and go, or any alternative egress in the event of an emergency where we need to have transit. I mean, that whole South Maui is a cul-de-sac comment that we had from a test 5 months ago has stuck with me. We need solutions, and if we block ourselves into not allowing roadways to transit the gulches, I just worry we're continuing with the problem. So, that's the reason I don't want to take it out.
I know. So, are we ready for a decision here? Even if we're not all agreeing with some. So far, we've had almost all of our decisions have been unanimous, but every now and then there will be one where we disagree and stuff move forward. So, since there has been some disagreement, I'll put it to a vote. Are those in favor of Setup 4.5 as on the screen, proposed by Paul and seconded by Mike? Please raise your hand. And those against? So, as chair, I break the tie, so vote yes. Go ahead, pass.
Doesn't pass. You need 7.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, but those who do not vote count as yeses. So how many is it totally in favor?
Roll call.
I thought you said that. Yes. Yes. Okay. Can we do one more before break, or is this supposed to be 1 hour break? Let's try to do one more.
Can you please state who abstained, because we did not get that on the record? Who abstained and who said no?
Okay, so I still do one more time to make sure everything's fair and square. Those in favor, please raise your hand. And those against, please raise your hand. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. Unless kind of a contradiction in terms.
So the abstentions were Vernon, Kyoki, and Cody.
Yes. Okay. And just to clarify, Karen said, Toba was assuming that figure 3.17 will be modified to show the explicit coaches that are listed. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, 2.4.6. To reduce setting costs to protect water quality, redevelopment and new development shall be encouraged to improve degraded areas by planting appropriate native plants. We have 3 comments here, which I think are interesting to put them on the table anyway. Mark suggests native plants are important, but not restricted to natives. And Robin says more explicitly, or other appropriate non-invasive plants such as vetiver. And then also Robin suggests replacing shall be encouraged with shall be required. Cody.
One of the things that I learned in my native horticulture class is that native and endemic plants have been evolving here for millions of years, and that they created that resilience within themselves to combat things like runoff and erosion and things like that. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we push for native and endemic plants. It's not we want native plants over invasive plants. It's more of they've accustomed themselves to the environment.
We have a motion ready to propose. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't look at your one here.
Yeah.
She did.
So yeah, I hear you, Cody, but I propose adding the language ecologically advantageous non-invasives. And it's not because there isn't wisdom within the native plants. It's because sometimes our landscapes are degraded, and if you look at the traits of other non-invasives, they can actually help native plants to establish. And so that's kind of one way that it's being approached. You need that canopy to close out the non-invasives while the natives grow in. It's a shame to rule that option out because it can be quite effective. So for that reason, I propose the addition of ecologically advantageous non-invasives before appropriate native plants for consideration as a motion.
So that was a motion. We have a second. So this is for the text on the yeah, for that 6. Mike, seconds. Okay, discussion. And then you get a break. You finish this, you take a break. Everett?
When we say improve degraded areas, are we referring to improving degraded areas on site? On site, on the properties, wherever this development is occurring, or redevelopment, or new development, it is proposed be encouraged to improve degraded areas. Is it on that parcel that we're referring to?
I think it's in general.
So it could be upstream?
Yeah, so perhaps this could be like the example last week where someone's coming and they're wanting to do a restoration project in a degraded area. This policy would support that use for the land. Similarly, if you had degraded parcel in the development area, it would also encourage the use of
On somebody else's property. I think it's, I'm looking at this from a developer, where new developers at. I come in with a project, or redevelopment of a project, and I'm encouraged to improve degraded areas. Someone else's property? In other words, I get it if it's on site, and I support it if it's on site, but I think we should be clear.
Yes, I don't think I was imagining this language would allow you to disobey private property laws. I think this is specific to an allowed place where you can.
I think you need to clarify that we just say on site or on the parcel, degraded areas on the parcel.
That clarification is just not really necessary. They're not going to ask you to go off-site from your project.
Others in the community are are going to be looking at this. And others in the community might say, well, that project should improve the area upstream. So I don't think it hurts us to say on the parcel.
I would add to that as well, just to understand the context in which this policy will be implemented, because it is very broad. So, I guess someone reviewing a development proposal and then looking at this, like, to me, it's not. I don't quite clearly understand how I would impose that, or how it would be imposed if it's meant to be imposed on the proposed development. The way it's currently worded. So that's kind of, I would encourage clarifying, the setting in which you envision this policy being applied. Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, I'm just a little bothered still about what I was saying earlier. I think that it's not really a problem when we can manage our invasive plants. It's who's going to be managing them I think is one of my issues. And also to the advantageous part. I am yet to see how invasive plants help our native plants grow. I know there's different genuses of native plants that are invasive that kind of do the same thing, but invasive plants are pretty much, or you say non-invasive. So this is kind of my trying to understand being more specific in what kinds of non-invasive plants that are native will reduce sediment loss and promote native growth.
I know that words are used very widely for that. Maui, that's just it. But I don't think we should specify types, because science will develop. We might find out that ones we think today are great are actually not so good, and we might find others that are even better. So I think the guideline is really an important thing here. Over.
Yeah, Cody, there is a whole field. I'll connect you with a professor at Hilo who's looking at the functional traits of plants and how non-invasive species can be complementary. So that might be a sidebar for later. I think also the question going back to Jordan was, what is this anyway? I think that this policy is just, okay, so you've got a degraded landscape, you can pave the thing, you can put grass on the thing, or you can put a bunch of water-hogging plants on the area. This is suggesting, let's please use native plants and things that will help native plants establish to stabilize the soil instead of cementing the area.
Yeah, so I think that helps. So, I've been chewing on this from last week. So I guess, and there's a couple other redundant policies further down we'll get to. And so what I gather is what we want to be saying is that basically development and redevelopment should prioritize native and endemic vegetation. And then there's this other language about suitable for the microclimate. And then there's this other aspect about minimizing the need for irrigation. So I think if to me, that's kind of that's the policy, and that when you kind of a development project come in, you look at it and go, are you prioritizing native endemic plants? Are you minimizing your irrigation? Is the planting suitable for the climate? And then you can provide better direction to these projects and how they satisfy the policy. Now, if we're talking about land management of Malta that's not tied into a development proposal, in my opinion, that's a different context. And there's different sets of policies in here, i.e. watershed management plans that fit that setting. Different than how you would evaluate a development project coming in and what we want and how we want that development project to behave. So that's kind of where I'm coming from when I say we're in that context of how we would implement these policies. Thank you.
Further discussion? Daniel?
I do like the idea of prioritizing the native plants. I mean, it leaves the door open for better ecological and advantageous non-invasive plants, but it does give native plants the priority in the equation.
Good, Cody.
I just wanted to add to that, a lot of our seed banks are looked over, neglected, and they're not even given a chance to come back until you allow them to come back or give them the time. One thing that is very awesome about Aina is, we're able to use that time on the land to understand those timelines and understand how long it takes for seed banks to return, certain seed banks. And, we did a sidewalk at a area in South Maui last week where they were going to restore the shoreline and had all these plans about what they wanted to implement, which was all good ideas, but in my mind, the only thing that was going on in my mind was, have you even bothered to see what was there, or even allowed the chance for the time that it would take to acknowledge what can be there. A lot of times, generalized methods will give you the ideas about what to implement, but Kiloaina is really about spending time on the land. And I think we lose a lot of that because we're all so busy nowadays. But to me, I think those are really important points that we as a community need to learn. About being on the land, understanding the way the land works, and literally watching grass grow. So
appropriate could be expanded that way to include something about taking into account the history of the plants that used to grow there. If I'm understanding you correctly, is that what you meant?
Yeah. So a lot of these seed banks, they lie dormant for a long time. I've seen Ilima sprout up after being inundated with piave and buffalo grass for 30, 40, 50 years. And then an area cleared and then give it maybe like 2 to 3 weeks and all this Ilima begins to pop up. Now, in an implemented plan, I want to just say, implemented with plans of this or plans of that. But, yeah.
Do you have a specific proposal to add to or change this one? Okay. In that case, are we ready to go to a decision on 2.4.6? Daniel?
I'm going to probably vote no on the motion because I would like to see appropriate native plants prioritized in the equations. If I vote no, that's the reason.
How about proposing a change and then maybe the adopt as a friendly amendment to just throw out the vehicle with the bad
Yeah, I'd like to excuse me. I would like to make a friendly amendment. I hope there's a friendly amendment to have the word prioritize in front of appropriate native plants. We have to switch the sentence around. I like prioritize native appropriate native plants to add it to the motion proposed by someone.
So what do you say?
A-okay. I mean, really, all this is an encouragement for developers. It's not anything more than that. So whatever makes people comfortable, if you want to just keep the native plants, if that makes you feel more comfortable, Cody, that's fine. I was just trying to help include some language that had come from other people in the community who felt like there was merit to that. But I mean, it's a suggestion. If you feel like it waters down that part of it, then
No, I completely understand. It's just that I feel like our plants have, our native plants have been, on that back burner, yeah. And it's always about promoting them and couple and lifting them up, and they have a job to do and I think they know their job. And we just want to give them a chance.
What do you say, Cody?
I'm good with that. Are you good with that, Cody? Okay. Shall we vote?
Mike, okay with that? Kyoki, other comment?
Just real quick, so we're not replacing, well, I'm watching. Very good. Encouraging, are we touching that at all? We changing that to requiring or no?
It is true. Is it good for her? Okay, Mike? Yeah. Are we ready to make a decision here? Any objections to adopting TDOT 4.6 as stated on the screen? Everyone? Object. Okay, so we'll take a vote. Okay, those in favor of TDOT 4.6 as on the screen, please raise your hand. And those against? Those abstaining, please raise your hand. Bruno abstains. Okay, we have deserved a break. A break.
Karen? Karen?
Yeah.
Is it possible to give you these comments that we email them before the deadline on 5/27?
Yeah, that is not
Well, it's submitted anyway.
Thanks for being on it.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
anyway.
printing it out.
Yeah.
Get those $5 bills from Claire's. Remember steak and salad.
How you doing? No, that's the phone. I'm glad. Okay. Yeah. I like it. Really good class.
Yeah, everything is what's happening right now. Meeting tonight, Facebook, we're going to set up another screen.
Yeah, I just had our situation. That was actually
yeah, that's what it is nowadays. It actually works pretty good.
But we got to fix the screen.
I know, I used to have that. And I see the drill. They still have the same exact thing.
Yeah, it's all Halifax. Not that I know of. I was there last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're so lucky. I mean, I went to the whole Indian was done by the university. Then my mom was trying to high school admission. So they don't keep your citizens today. Not spending money.
There's a citizens. All the way through all the exhibits, everything they do.
Super good.
Did they get
a great celebration. We're looking, oh yeah, here, my life is great, big figures. Easy to get down there, easy to get anything else, right? Well, I guess sit down. Yeah, she looked good. I was really running so many points I wanted to start here. The discussion with it. Just because it's unsettling. It's fine. Participation is better than no participation. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing to remember.
Video testimony. They let people submit video testimony in advance like they're not going to do witness testimony. Like YouTube videos.
Oh, really?
I'm just saying, maybe they should do that. Maybe that would maybe they wouldn't have to testify for hours at a time.
That's not a bad thing. I hadn't thought of that. Because you're right, they do written testimony. They do speak.
Yeah, I mean, and I think lets people who are not really that, writers, they start to have ideas. They could just make a little FaceTime video.
Right, just use your phone and record it.
Yeah, record it, send it in, boom. And you get to express it as you want, whatever it is. If you got a picture, you put a picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wouldn't be shown at the meeting, though.
No.
Right.
But the whole community could see it. And
right.
People who are not fancy on the computer could see it. Easy on their phone. Yeah. That would be good.
That's a really good idea.
I gotta work on that.
No, I like that because just because people can do that now, even anybody, just about it.
And it's anytime you're I like it.
Because, and the various council members and staff can take the time to look at that testimony. Not
Yeah, you see some software there. You show the software picture. Use the picture and ask the software to describe what's in the picture. What kind of plan, what kind of file is it? And it will type out the description of the file. Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff.
Take a break time, find your seats, and so we can go again.
Yeah. I was blown away. It's all happened in the last 2 years. Just one explosive.
Okay, resuming meeting at 7 p.m. Go ahead, Ms. Norris.
I'd like to reconsider my goal for 2.4.6, and I told us we're interested. And I'd like to reconsider my goal for 2.4.6. I'd like to recommend changing, removing and or adding verbiage removing the word or before ecologically advantageous non-invasive plants. The reason being is you can simply say, oh, they said or, so we'll just go for the non-invasive plants. I want to make sure that the emphasis speaks priority for the native plants first and foremost. So, and if that would suffice, I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks, or if they would consider just changing it, would then emphasize the priority for the native plants. So, thank you for changing that. So I don't know, would that suffice? Rob, what do you think about that? Adding just and instead of or.
Was that? Yeah, the reason the reason that was proposing that is to not put them on equal footing, or
I would still think adding something, and I like to add, but it still almost says, I just want to make sure that native plants, they plant first and foremost, and only if we have to add, or if that would be such a good benefit to add the non-invasive plants, then, that could be a possibility. So, go ahead.
What would you think of and as needed ecologically advantageous plants? So that would just be if there was some functional ecological niche that couldn't be filled by a native plant in the short run, but the priority would remain on the native plants?
Yes, I think that would be okay.
Okay, so this means we're reopening 2.4.6. So I need a motion to revisit it. Yes.
Point of order, on a reconsideration of approved motion, do we have to take a vote to reconsider it? To reconsider a motion?
I don't think so. You can make a motion to reconsider it.
Would it change maybe some of the people who have abstained? Maybe, so maybe we consider taking it up? I don't know what the...
Chair.
Yes.
Not that I'm an expert, but I believe typical practice would be a vote to reconsider action on the item first, and then the motion, actual amendment be proposed. Thank you.
Sounds fine.
I will go with court counsel.
So I don't think this is as contentious or as complicated as the neighborhood here, because I think we really all want the same thing. We're just trying to formulate this in a way that addresses that. So, okay, to be very formal here, someone have a motion to reconsider 2.4.6. And they will have a second. And Brian. Okay, now. We have new text on 2.4.6, Tora formulated it. We need someone to make a motion to adopt it as now stated. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to reopen. Are there any objections to reopening 2.4.6? Okay, and we reopen it. Now, we have a motion to adopt the revised text. In a second. Brian, further discussion? You want to vote on this, Eric?
From I'd like to insert designated areas on site.
So we accept that. Right.
Thank you. the line up above, improve designated areas on site.
So you want to delete the to improve degraded areas and put designated areas?
Is that not okay? Everyone? Yeah, right. Okay. I think now we have finally reached some make a decision. So, any objections to adopting 2.46 as on the street? Good. Sorry, I'm going to adopt the 2.46. 2.47, let's see. To support watershed management and protect water quality, redevelopment and new development shall be encouraged to avoid and minimize and mitigate impacts to the existing surface and groundwater hydrology. Wetland buffers, and recharge area conservation and restoration will be prioritized. And Robin suggested replacing the word encouraged with required. I have a motion for some language. So, Everett, no, and Mike.
So moved.
To adopt it as written or with required. To adopt it as written or shall be required. Which one? Okay, let's just take it as it is.
Yeah, I was going with as is. I didn't see that exception, so as is.
Okay, do we have a second? Is that every second? The discussion? Daniel?
Who is it that suggested in place of encourage the word require?
That was Robin Knox. In my opinion, it's in line with our desire to have definitive language rather than suggested language. And I don't think what's required here is anything unreasonable at all. It's kind of common sense today.
For discussion purposes, I'd like to amend the word encourage to require. Be a friendly amendment.
And Mike, do you accept that change? Yes. And who seconded that? Was that okay? Is that okay? Further discussion? Any objections to adopting 2.47 with that one change from encouraged to required? Okay, I'm going to adopt the 2.47. Moving along to 2.4.8. So do we have any language there? No. Okay. Encourage reestablishing historic hydrology and management of hydrologically connected systems where appropriate. On that one, similarly, Robin suggests replacing the word appropriate with where possible, where feasible. Was first?
I move that we strike this one and not include it.
Do we have a second for that? Do we have a motion to adopt this with or without change. To the whole lady. Yes, do it.
So are we able to ask why someone would like to strike it?
She can, sure you can.
I think if it were possible to do this, then I would be more inclined to support it. But a lot of times, Maui, things that drainage ways that were once existing are no longer. They've been changed upstream. They've been. They just don't. They don't exist. So reestablishing historic hydrology, in a lot of cases, it's just impossible. It's just they've changed upstream. They don't exist anymore.
It does say where appropriate. And I know that Kyoki has one very concrete example where it should be highly desirable. Kind of stream which is currently flowing over the road.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it does say where appropriate. It doesn't say everywhere. And I know that Kyoki has a very specific example of this with Canal Street flooding the highway instead of going where it really should be going.
Yeah, I'm less worried about it not being possible ever just because it's encouraged and where appropriate or where possible. And, some friends here have taught me about lagoons that existed. Well, if that condo were redeveloped and there still is that freshwater spring, wouldn't it be amazing to have policy encouraging, the reestablishment? So it's not prescriptive. It's
You both have convinced me. I withdraw my motion. Thanks for the question.
So, will someone make a motion in favor of the language here? Do that already. They will. And a second? Edward. Okay, discussion. Okay, any objections to that 4.8 as in the proposal on the screen? And we have adopted 2.4.8. Preserve and protect native coastal vegetation and coastal processes by, and then we have the original proposal from the plan department and a new proposal to withdraw sub-item A, appropriately regulating and limiting development in the shoreline setback area. So, I'm not sure if we need to explicitly reject this. Or is it enough to just not adopt it? Since it's not proposed anymore.
You can just accept it as it is with the revision.
The revision is removing it.
And you want to reject removing it?
I don't want to reject, I'm just saying, do we need to do anything since it's not being proposed? Unless someone proposes it.
I'm unclear what the question is, I'm sorry.
So do we need a formal motion to adopt or reject 2.4.9A since no one's proposing it? I don't think so.
No, you can just, if somebody wants the motion, they could propose to accept the motion without, as written. And as written is without that in there.
Yeah. So just ask quickly, is there anyone who wants to restore 2.4.9A? Okay. No question, Daniel?
Was the reason, I want to call the reason why it was removed in the first place, did it have to do with pickings?
It has to do with the the shoreline setback area being the purview of the Maui Planning Commission and not of this body.
And to that for that line B, requirement of proposed shoreline developments to use native coastal vegetation in landscaping. And Mark suggests, similar to, as we discussed earlier, there are some very good nature-based solutions using non-native species as well.
Chair over here. Maybe Jordan, can you try to turn that speaker towards us a little bit? There's times when we can't hear you on this side. Would that help? Okay, now just off that.
Okay, so Jova.
I've proposed a couple of changes for 2.4.9 on the pink sheet. For one, including the use of ecologically advantageous non-invasives. But based on our earlier conversation, perhaps it's prioritizing native coastal vegetation and as needed ecologically advantageous non-invasives. And the second addition is to the end of C, to limit irrigation to plant establishment period. To make it clear, we're not wanting to plant things in dunes that are watered in perpetuity. Looking at a motion.
Second.
So the motion is second. Can we get those up on the screen? Is it possible?
Is D removed from that motion? From this policy?
We suggest that we propose to remove it, Tora, or just not change it?
Keep it as is. There was some discussion from testifiers about the need to define cell level, so I don't know whether people need that. I believe this is referring to, so you can't just look at your own beach in front of your house, you have to look at where it's operating as a system. So if we have houses next to each other, wherever that embayment is from starting and ending, that's a beach cell, is the way the city moves is going to be impacted for all of us.
So about like on property, like after Sugar Beach, it's all mine going with this 2.49, 2.4.9. Like my phone's property on that coastline one. And the reason why I say that because the canoe club guys, they all into sand dune restoration, right? Where they get to leave the canoe over there on the sand dune. Which kind of weird for me. And so I think I just taking this moment of would that fall in this category of this land?
So I think rather than referring to specific areas, it's more, hey guys, let's not think TMK by TMK because it's not going to work for this problem set. Let's think of this solution set in terms of the geographic area that makes sense for the way ecologically functions. So I know that's not exactly answering your question, but it's just, in the old days, we said, oh, let's manage our beach, let's throw a seawall. Well, that was my solution, but it killed your beach. So it's more just, let's have a cell-by-cell solution. In the same way we're trying to have like a Malcolm Mackay solution for how we deal with drainage. It doesn't work if you're trying to deal with it at one point in play. Beach management doesn't work if you're trying to deal with it properly. That's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Lynn?
city, is that correct? And the whole thing, so my member is failing here. Who made the motion? Who made the motion? Okay. Okay.
It can include D. I think I was proposing 2.4.9 with the additions to B and C, and assuming it was the same language for D, unless people felt like they needed clarification on each language.
Okay, and who seconded that? Daniel? Okay, so now we have on the screen B, C, and D as proposed. Further discussion? Daniel?
Can we include beach cell in definitions? In page 45, can we add beach cell? What does that mean as a definition?
Is that doable? Okay, very good. Further discussion about 2.4.9? Any objections as on the screen? Proposed by Tobin and Daniel? And we will adopt 2.4.9 B, C, and D. 2.4.10. Remove new development and requiring new development and redevelopment to include native and endemic plants appropriate for the microclimate, to conserve water, provide shade, beauty, and reduce sediment runoff. All new landscaping must minimize irrigation needs. And I suggested that endemic doesn't make sense because native includes endemic. And Mark suggests here again that many non-native plants can be used while the native species are being established.
I move that we approve this as written with the insertion of minimized potable irrigation needs. Because we have a lot of effluent to get rid of, so I don't want to just eliminate irrigation. I think what we're really concerned about is potable water being used in irrigation.
Please say what is the modification? What is the modification to the text?
The word potable water irrigation needs. Potable water between minimized and irrigation.
Affordable, okay. Let's minimize potable irrigation needs. Okay. Got it. Is there a second? Okay, another motion. Another motion. Absolutely, we can talk about it.
I was just going to suggest again that we include that language of prioritizing natives, but as needed ecologically advantageous languages, in addition to the minimizing volume.
Is there a second?
I think it was a friendly amendment.
Was it friendly amendment? Okay. Okay, so where are we at now? That looks like we just discussed. Discussion? Any objections to the text as modified on the screen? Do you have 4.10? And we would have to see that 4.10. I think we found a good formula there. We're reusing it. 2.4.11. Let's see what it is. you say? No, okay. Therefore, 11. Require affordable housing using Chapter 201H, Hawaii Revised Statutes 2.96 or 2.97, MCC process to be outside the special flood hazard areas, SFHA, which includes for V, VE, A, AO, H, and D. Daniel?
I just have a question about the alphabet soup. What all those letters mean in the policy.
Okay.
Those are all the special flood hazard areas that are the most severe.
Director, what do you think of this response?
I mean, yeah, it's appropriate because obviously you want to minimize developing in hazardous areas, but at the same time, you're going to severely cut off any more affordable housing in South Maui below the highway. I don't think there's much land left that isn't touching one of these flood hazard areas, so I mean, you just gotta kind of be cognizant of that. Thank you.
Daniel?
Yeah, just building on what Director Molina said regarding building housing in that area. That could be a constraint. Also, I think not having a north-south collector road is another restraint because it doesn't relieve traffic on our two other corridors. So there's a couple of restraints right now. This could be one.
I think that's very appropriate. I agree with the director that there are no places left below the highway that we should build. Actually, that's what we're going into. We want to have buildable, reasonable, I think that's, we've run out of reasonable places to build now the highway. That's what we're running into. That's why some of these so-called affordable housing projects are being rejected because they're not appropriate places to build. To say you're going to build an affordable housing project in a river gulch because it's okay, well, this is just for the poor people. I think that's what we're trying to stop and say, yes, let's start building above the highway for these affordable housing projects. And we're seeing the two seem to be very respected affordable rental projects from Ikaika Ohana are built above the highway in good spots and are truly affordable. They're truly affordable rents. Well, I think that's what this is saying. We've run out of spots down there. Let's not build anything more there. Wow.
I think we have a huge urban growth area in North Kihei in ranchlands called Kapolulu. Right, Rory? You up? But we gotta look them up.
See, we don't have a motion that wants it. The motion, do a second? Second. Mike seconds. Any further discussion? Brian?
I just have a question if we're saying it's required, how does that go back to the other requirements we had for affordable housing, tying it to it has to be close to schools and workplaces, and it has to be also on the parcel that's being developed on? Does that put us in kind of conflict that prohibits something from being developed? And it's more of a question. I'm just trying to connect the dots and make sure we're not creating a situation where we're separating.
I don't think there's a conflict because when we're saying it has to be near to these other locations, it's like, well, what do we determine as near? If we're saying, well, it has to be a short walk, I don't think we're saying that. Most of the parents taking the kids to school driving them, and all our schools are close to the highway. They're either just above it or just below it. So I don't think that that there is a conflict in that, not my opinion.
I think Brian's correct. As I recall the conversation weeks ago when we were talking about the issue of having affordable housing close, it was within walking distance. Because I think I made reference to properties above the highway, and feedback was it needs to be close to jobs and schools, and so we are contradicting ourselves. Maybe it's inevitable, but we are contradicting ourselves.
So there are two currently proposed projects in the key, which are in the Stepa zone, or definitely threatened by flooding. One is south of Waipulani Road. The other one, I think, is actually in the Gulf itself when they built it. That just does not make sense to me. Maybe close to things, just because they're underwater, is that really the right thing to do? I mean, just because people can't afford their housing?
I'm not suggesting that we don't make this required. I'm just saying, I'm asking a question that I think is in conflict with our others that we made a requirement of, so we might want to go back to the other ones to reevaluate those. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to this being required. I just think that we're creating a bit of conflict for ourselves.
I agree with you. I also support this, but I think we need to go back and revisit our prior policy that we approved.
See, further discussion? Any objections? Okay, I'm going to go back and see that for that one. Let's see. Yes, we do. We have another suggestion from Tolbert. Oh, yeah, actually, the suggestion from Tolbert is the same as the door proposed. We're just adding and culturally. So it would be environmentally. Environmentally and culturally, actually, areas, wetlands and other environmentally and culturally sensitive areas will be preserved. Go on.
Yeah, I make a motion to adopt the pink modification to 2.4.3.
Second by Brian. Mike, is there a comment? No thirds. Discussion? I'm sorry, did I ever?
Questions. I mean, areas is pretty broad. Is that a parcel? Is that within the so many feet of the shoreline? That's one observation. And the other is, who decides what is culturally sensitive? Is that the Cultural Resource Committee Who makes that determination?
With what Eric just said, I think that goes for any kind of doing that reference is who we refer to. So I just want to say that going forward or looking back, I think that's important to establish.
Cody? For that part, I would say Native Hawaiian organizations and just Hawaiians themselves. They want to, if they're ever notified or want to speak on behalf of these areas.
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time? I didn't quite get that.
So you say he said who do you notify? So there are Native Hawaiian organizations out there. Also Hawaiians who are just wanting to be a part of the process themselves, and they're the ones to notify, or they're the ones that will come forward.
I can't answer that question, but I think that the goal of this is wonderful. Protecting, preserving open space areas as important assets of the region. That's basically the gist of it.
Yeah, I think so. What David brought up, so this kind of triggered cultural overlay here. It's very, it's things that need to be massaged in there. Something similar to this. Talking about areas, and put NHOs in there, or some group, or cultural lineal descendants from the area. I'm not sure, but this is something really we have to lock in good, because when I see this at the cultural overlay bill, it needs work. And it's kind of related to what David brought up. And we okay with this. It's just gotta figure out like a template, or general saying from here on we have to identify, who the culture guys will be, or the area, if that makes sense.
Reading this again, it looks like there's two thoughts. One is open space is important. The other thought is that when we do open space, it's not just like like a zoo, like a park or something. We need to preserve what's there, take into account the environment and cultural history of the area. So I think that's why it has these two parts. And also, I think you're right about the cultural overlay being an important way to determine whether particular areas would be affected.
Excuse me, Chair. Yes. I just, in response to the question about defining open space, if you wanted to provide some clarity, you could refer to the designation, protect and preserve areas designated open space, because that is a community plan designation. If you wanted to have that clarity, just putting that out there.
Most friendly amendment to follow what Jackie just recommended and keep culturally sensitive in there with that tradition.
It was an original motion, so that will be the motion. Need a second. Well, actually, did you make the motion?
Total motion.
You made it. Okay. So the question is, do you accept that change?
Designated open space.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay. Any objections to adopting? I'm sorry, Daniel? 13. So here we have another suggestion from Contoba, which adds permaculture as one of the design practices, and also requires rather than encourages management of those. So I'll read it as in Contoba's proposal. Require the implementation of low-impact development or permaculture design practices in developments in South Maui to reduce stormwater runoff and protect water quality. Require management of flows that are greater than the 5-year storm event to retain, filter, and sink as much stormwater and remove pollutants through low-impact design or permaculture design as feasible on site.
It sounds really positive. I just have a question for the director. Do you think the 5-year storm is the right definition?
No. So again, low impact development as kind of a silver bullet requirement so that there's no flexibility. I mean, that's like saying everybody drives cars, nobody can drive a truck. Everybody drives bikes, no one drives any more vehicles anymore. If a property has enough space to manage their stormwater, I don't think they should be required to do low impact development. Because the end result is the same of managing the stormwater. Currently, developments have to the drainage rules require that new developments retain their increase in runoff. And that a quantity of runoff is based on the site size. So I believe the threshold is, I don't remember exactly, it's somewhere 10 to 25 acres between a 50-year storm and a 100-year storm. Typically those stormwater improvements catch everything, and so they do effectively not only mitigate their increases, but they mitigate their existing runoff up to those 50-year storms. So I guess in that sense, the 5-year storm is fine because it's way below what the current standards require. Thank you.
Do you have a motion?
Director, how would you word this policy? You're going to have to interpret it. So how would you?
So again, as I mentioned earlier, where you're doing a new development and you have the space to plan, you don't necessarily need low impact development to achieve your stormwater management. It's an alternative you can use, but it's not necessary. Now when you get below the highway, where you don't have that space, so you're talking about redevelopment that doesn't have that space, and it may not be physically possible to capture the amount of stormwater we require, and then in that case, my recommendation would be then to mandate the low impact developments as kind of that alternative to them not being able to manage the amount of stormwater we require. I think that's an appropriate way to impose that low impact development requirement. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we insert require the implementation of low impact development where appropriate. Matter of fact, I would put where appropriate after permaculture design practices. So require the implementation of low impact development permaculture design practices where appropriate in developments.
That was a motion. Is there a second? Brian seconds. Discussion. Tova.
Clarifying question for Jordan. Jordan, in these sites where there's the ability to manage all stormwater within the footprint, do those practices that would come into play ever require, or would that be accommodated through connection to an existing stormwater system?
It could. So like if we take Maui the highway, for example, they're going to have to build that on-site mitigation existing system, whether it be your traditional detention basin or LID or whatever combination of engineering solutions they want to implement to manage that stormwater. Now, based on the size of the storm they're required to manage, ultimately there's going to need to be an outfall into the natural drainage way. And whether that natural drainage way ends up in the county system or some other system depends on what the surrounding conditions, will require.
So I guess that's, to get at the other way, the direct way is some of the stormwater practices now don't include the treatment requirement. And I think that the intent of this is,
that's not correct.
But if anything is connecting to a storm drain system, there is no treatment in Kihei once it connects to that.
Yeah, so again, every storm system has its capacity. So once they, even LID, once they reach their capacity, they're going to flow off the property and carry whatever's in them. The county has both construction and post-construction BMPs for both stormwater flows and water quality. So there is requirements to manage water quality discharge off development sites currently. And the traditional method is a basin because it does both collect the volume and collect the sediment.
Great. So if I'm understanding correctly, there is treatment happening, so it's still the choice. Because I think that's the appeal of LID is it increases the level of pollution reduction that happens. And we've got such an issue here at the coast, people really want to get behind that. But if you're saying the current regulations are also protective of water quality, then it makes it less.
I think that's a misconception out there that they don't have water quality components, but it is in our drainage rules that they have to address water quality. And the basins are that easy dual-purpose solution to not only collect the amount of water coming in, but retain that sediment before it's allowed to flow out.
You get that work real quick there, just for motion. After practices. That's the motion. We have further discussion? Daniel? Any objections? Okay, time to move out to should I put up 13? Actually, is that right? Yes. And then let's see. 14, so public comments over the park section. I also made that comment. It seems like it's over the park section, but it doesn't mean we can't adopt it. It could be adopted and then we'll move to that section. Because we already went through that part, so. Do we have a motion for 14?
Yes, so moved, and I also support moving into the park section.
Second by Brian. And just a comment by Mark, I don't know if this causes us to change this, but he says, composting toilets could be a game changer for water conservation, creating nutrients instead of wastewater. Okay, so that's just a supporting statement. Okay. Further discussion? Go ahead.
So also part of the consultation dealing with bathrooms down at McKenna Beach. And I remember the one thing we were trying to implement more composting toilets over there, but and we're going to go with that idea, but they're having a problem with the amount of volume of people. So that's one thing to think about. Composting toilets are good, but if you have a lot of people coming at one time, then it's not.
Did we adopt this? Or no? We did. I think we adopted this one. And then, to 15, encourage new shoreline developments and redevelopments to include public restrooms near beach access to improve ocean water quality. Cody?
So I had a question on this one. How does public restrooms improve ocean water quality?
What is the answer?
That's what's happening when there is no restroom by the water. Yup.
I kind of suspected that.
So how do we mitigate the runoff situation? How do we mitigate the cesspool or any of the bacteria getting into the ocean? Is there some of the same issues we deal with when we're having that consultation about the bathrooms at McKenna? And over there is one of the most pristine qualities of water. So, what is worse?
When I read this policy, it includes the notion that those restrooms would be done in such a way as they're not creating deleterious environmental impacts. They would either be sewered or have some other system. I mean, I am just assuming that because the focus is improved ocean water quality, whatever system put in would not compromise water quality. But if you feel like it's not clear in the language, if you have a proposal for making it more clear.
Do we have an option? Is it Mike?
I have a question. We're talking about shoreline development. Haven't we decided we don't want to develop along the shoreline any longer? The shoreline projects that we have are already in trouble. Or will be in trouble, sure. So, to say what we're going to do with them, it seems to me like we shouldn't even be discussing this. I thought we were going to prohibit shoreline, further shoreline development. We're talking about the retreat. I'm not quite sure where this is going.
This could be the initial one about South Key Road. Okay. Guilty.
So it's just my observation on South Key Road sewer kind of need upgrade, right? There's always, and with sea level rising, and especially from below. Is that a fair assessment? Because they're doing work yet down there by Maui coast. And then there's projects coming up where they have to change some of those lines or upgrade those lines. So the picture that I have is we're going to put back knowingly in the future, not too far down the road, that those lines will be infiltrated or impacted somewhere somehow. And then it's going to, or whatever is going to happen. Because they're old, yeah.
Yeah, so South Key Road, there's several projects have been going and are currently going to replace, old sewer lines. And that is the question for all you guys to answer. What are we gonna do? And how long we gonna, or when we gonna actually act on this? Because there's a lot of people that South Key Road and its facility service currently. You can't just turn off the switch. And so that's, that is kind of the challenge facing this plan update is what is that outlook for, South Key Road in particular look like?
Just going, sorry, I know this was a good question, Vernon, but just going back real quick to Cody bringing up McKenna. That is a state park, yeah. So to what extent do they collaborate or work with the county? Because do they adhere to any of what we say as far as policies go, or are they kind of just on their own thing, or how can we input in a state situation like that? Because McKenna is a hot topic as far as expanding into bathrooms, showers. They're talking about making the parking lots bigger. As it stands, there's already a few thousand people. I don't know how you can encourage more people to come to Big Beach, but does the county have any say?
Yes, I think the most direct way would be through the SMA permit process, which I believe does have consideration for the community plans. And so if the state came in with a project that required them to get SMA major permits, these policies would be applicable, and that's where the opportunity would be for the county to kind of help direct the state on the scope of their improvements. Because for the most part, the state's not trying to develop, their parklands. So it's going to be whatever specific improvements, and if those trigger county permits, at which point will trigger these community plan policies to be in effect and to apply to those projects.
Thank you. One last comment on that. If it ain't broke, we'll fix it. We can get that. Guess that. I said if it ain't broke, we'll fix it. And I spent years working on there, and the visitors grumble about porta potties, but they're provided. When you're talking about building showers and bathrooms in between wetlands, a lot of people don't realize there's like 3 or more prominent wetlands there. So we gotta be really, really careful what we accept and don't accept. Thank you. Goody.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that too. One of our biggest things was when, kind of depends where you're going to put it. And in a place like McKenna, it's not really a family beach. It's, I've seen people walking there with snorkel gear on a really big day. And families walking in there, and I'm just kind of like, what are these guys doing, And when you're talking about setting up showers and bathrooms, basically you're inviting the whole family to come. And I can see restrooms at certain areas, but it's kind of like where is pretty important. McKenna is one of those places.
Good discussion, but can I kind of read it back to what we're working on right now? So, our goal is not the Maui Watershed Convention, and I'm pretty sure the reason that there is a policy proposed here about adding more bathrooms is because when you look at the threat smell from Maui, it includes untreated sewage getting deposited in the bush by people who do not have anything else they use. So, it's not specific to area, it's simply saying when there's a new development or something is changing near a beach access point. So no matter how far back shoreline goes, there's always going to be a beach access point. we're lucky, we can still hang on to our beaches. So in the spirit of having less raw sewage making its way into our ocean, I'd like to propose we adopt this policy, which opportunistically would help if something's already going in that would have the infrastructure that would allow less raw sewage in our ocean.
I'd like to maybe propose just adding in a word after shoreline developments, comma, redevelopments, and or improvements. So I know because you just talked about the state not wanting to add things or anything, but if there's going to be some kind of improvement where you could add a bathroom, then that should be considered to hopefully, what do you call that, so people don't have to poop in the water. So, but if you add improvements, I think that would also be the third category.
We don't have a second, but you accept that as a motion? Okay. Do you have a second? Deborah was first. Deborah was the first second. Okay, discussion. Okay, any objections? And we adopt into that with 15 with that change. So we have two proposed additional policies. One is in Toba's handout. Require update of county drainage standards to include provisions supporting permaculture design techniques.
This would be an action.
And then I written a while ago, and this is based on the two studies that Mike Eco shared with us. Discourage beach erosion and tea growing projects to protect ocean water quality. This is based on the newest science. This is from the National Fisheries and the impact on fisheries and corals of beach nourishment and tea growing projects. It's a new one. To protect ocean water quality.
Before we go into this one, can we go back to 2.4.15? And I want to object to that one.
Propose to reopen it?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Phil. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, sorry. We need a vote first, yes. Okay, those in favor of, that's it. Those in favor of reopening to the Board of 15, raise your hand. And, okay, Dan Madsen. And those opposed? Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Glenn.
So I'm just going with my gut, and I see problems in the future with these bathrooms, and I see them leaking out to the ocean. I also see a lot of changes happening, people getting hurt, going to the wrong places like McKenna. I think that topic is a big topic, and I would vote to scratch that right now.
So that was the motion. Is there a second? This is basically to repeal 2.15. Let's go.
So if we remove it, I'm trying to see one forward. It still kind of covers some stuff. Yeah, okay, sorry, I just needed a moment to think about it.
I just kind of wanted to clarify too that McKenna is probably the last state park that doesn't have a restroom. And I was in consultation for like 3 years with the state, and we were pushing not to have restrooms and showers over there for a number of reasons. The quality of the water, and one of the biggest ones was because McKenna Beach is one of the biggest highly impacted areas when it comes to neck injuries. So that's the only reason why I'm like, I gotta go with my gut and cannot support encouraging public restrooms in these parks, those parks.
Just to clarify, are you anticipating there being new shoreline development in McKenna State Park? Because if not, this doesn't apply to it. So this is saying if something is already built, those people building stuff need to help out a little bit more and make it so people have a choice other than pooping in the bushes. This isn't like go into pristine places and put bathrooms. This is like you've already got a property. Give people a choice. If your property is right next to beach access and people have no place to go and they're going in the water or they're going on the beach, help build a bathroom in that area or encourage that.
Well, maybe I am misunderstanding a little bit, but there are a lot of developments happening in McKenna right now, right next to Big Beach. And so, yeah, it's kind of my thoughts on it.
I wouldn't exclude it because it does say redevelopment or improvements, so there could be improvements.
Mr. Chairman, you know, a lot of these big landowners have been given a free ride. I was looking at page 34 of the PA McKenna Community Plan, and it reads solid, liquid, and solid waste. Coordinate improvements to sewage transmission lines and wastewater reclamation facilities to meet the needs of future population growth, which is McKenna and the areas constantly growing. The language reads, require that Wailea Resort Company and Wailea McKenna Alliance work towards a solution that would enable the Wailea sewage system to be dedicated to the county. They gotta take responsibility for the growth that is happening towards that end. And I like the language that page 34 of the Hige Community McKenna Community Plan reads. These guys that have a free ride in developing million-dollar homes, make them accept the responsibility to deal with the stool and urine that is being created for what is happening now at Big Beach. Why give them a free ride?
Hey, Jordan Hans, answer. All the bathrooms out, on the McKenna site, not the ones, there's like 2 bathrooms in here. All of them are hooked up to the treatment plant, to your knowledge?
I believe everything from Malawaka back town side is on the sewer system.
Okay, so
That's where the county, or the county system ends.
are there any bathrooms, county bathrooms not hooked up to the sewer system along the beach?
I gotta believe there are, and there might be on septic systems. But one that jumps out, not for I'm not sure about Kihei though. Kihei might be okay. But I believe there's other sites in the county where the park bathroom is on a individual waste system to a septic system.
So we don't have a second for moving to that full F-15. I'll second. Yogi seconds. Okay. So we've already been discussing for a while now. We're ready to go to a decision. Go ahead.
So 2.415 public restrooms. So if they had something in, sorry for it's on the same, but if you had composting toilets instead of, is that slightly different or still the same? Like, could there be like a somewhat compromise?
Well, the only issue for what we're dealing with was that the volume of people. Yeah. So I'm for composting toilets, and we're actually pushing towards composting toilets. And then they did the whole study and everything like that, and it came back that they wouldn't be able to do that at McKenna. So kind of went back to the drawing board again, and ended up that they wanted to implement, I forget the name of it, but they'll basically have mixed in with septic tank and for us also.
So and then it was just because of the volume of people there that they couldn't keep up with cleaning the toilets. Is that why they said no, or that's just
for the composting toilets. Yeah.
But that would be a better solution than having.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that.
So I mean, I'm only for this decision. I'm thinking about McKenna because McKenna is the last, basically, big part that doesn't have a restroom. So it's kind of like my decision.
How about if we put except McKenna? So all those stretches of toilet paper that I walk over every day in North Kihei could be replaced by a toilet that flushes if it's next to a facility that has that capacity. Could we put that as an exception? Except in, or, the remote areas that are beyond the county sewer system, or something to that effect to kind of provide that protection for the things that, I hear you. I would be worried about those things too. But I'm also worried about what I see every day where there are no facilities.
So what I can see is the county sewer system doesn't extend to, for example, Poco on beach property. So I don't think you want to say the composting toilets are an option for a place like that.
Yeah, McKenna is, we can all agree that McKenna has a lot of people that go there. And if it was other places, I'm sure that composting toilets could accommodate a lot more. So, yeah, I would be able to do that. I agree with you on that.
So, that's a friend, we accept as a friendly amendment, to accept it, keep the language, but we'll accept the kind of,
they'll never bring them into the loop. So I would have concerns that we're taking them out of the mix because we don't know what future technology is going to be.
Thank you, Brian. All good comments from everybody. Mahalo for all you guys. Mahalo. I see the issue here. This policy is appropriate for many, but not all. And I feel what Cody's feeling as far as like just the fact that McKenna, because McKenna would be included in this, that it has to be scratched. I mean, it's that important a resource. The place is pristine. The state biologist comes here involved with water testing. They come down and they find nothing every time. And the walls are closing in on that region. When we go on calls at my job, it really bothers me how badly the water quality is just around the corner from McKenna Landing more north. When as a child, Kihei was pristine as McKenna. So it's a tough one. I get it. I understand what you're saying, but the fact that it includes McKenna is that's the important thing right there. I believe Corey and I are on the same page with that. Any more thoughts would be great.
Could you make a separate policy that would say discourage new toilets in McKenna until there is advances so that it's not impacting the resources, or discourage toilets in McKenna because it encourages people coming, whatever the reason is.
Sure. There's one thing.
Jeremy, tell me the honest truth about sea level rise. People need to be educated. All the pump stations along South Key Road, eventually, due to sea level rise, are going to be moved out. True?
I won't say they have to be moved, but at a certain point, they're not going to be functional.
Hopefully, this group of people have enough intelligence to be practical. If we got to move, Mr. Chairman, all our pump stations to move Malta, how are we going to deal with all the stool and sewage being pumped to us from the hotels in Wailea? Wailea Development Company developed all these hotels. They named all the sand dunes where the Grand Wailea is. When are we going to get these guys to be responsible to deal with the pump station and the sewage treatment plant that's going to be affected by sea level rise? It's going to be like Lahaina. All the pipes along Honopi'ilani are rotting. We had to do that recently because they're underwater. Salt water was leaking into the sewage pipe. Where is the answer to common sense amongst Homo sapiens like us?
Daniel?
I like the idea suggested by Karen to have two policies. Yeah. One to address Cody's concerns, then one to address, Toba's concerns.
So I think, if I understood correctly, that 2.4.15 can stay as it is. We'll just add another policy with restrictions. Jackie?
I just want to share that the state has its own executive rules regarding their state parks, and so they kind of follow their own rules. I mean, I think if there was an SMA major, like a major project, like as Jordan had brought up, it could be required to be consistent with the community plans, but generally they follow their own executive rules for state parks.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that generally the state doesn't care about community plans.
So, do we have language for this second policy? Including?
So, Jordan, being that the state is heavily involved in that decision, what would be your take on how we would move forward with this?
I guess maybe one question is, talk about McKenna. Do we want a bathroom at all? Is it about, like you said, the composting toilet and the maintenance of that? Or is it about just having a toilet facility at the park? Because, there's alternates to composting toilets. You can get crazy and say extend the wastewater main all the way to McKenna, so you're piped into the sewer system. So yeah, I'm not too sure.
I just wanted to take back what I just said about the state not caring about community plans. Because it's part of the general plan state. Yeah, so I take that back.
Stripping the record. So I have to say that I think that Brian did have a point. That science is going to change, technology is going to change, and be ashamed to rule out the possibility of providing so that people don't poop in the ocean, poop on the grass account. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask you if Karen had any suggestions for language on this policy.
Sorry, Karen, I didn't put you in the spot there.
Put the three restrooms at McKenna State Park until the technology is improved and will not degrade water quality. Or you could put until there's sufficient community support.
So where does it go with that? Someone make a motion?
I'll make a motion on 2.4.16.
Second by Georgie. Further discussion on the new 2.4.16. Any objections? Okay, I'm going to adopt the 2.4.16. So I can see. So there was a suggestion from Robert, implement and continue to update the Southwest Maui watershed plan on an ongoing basis starting immediately. That's more of an action. I actually propose something similar when we get to actions. Look it up here anyway. The other one was, this is more major, this is more of a policy. Required coordination between South Maui and country groups in discussing, planning, and managing South Maui watershed.
if people like the idea, it could be, the action could be form a committee to coordinate between South County and Upcountry and managing watersheds.
I think there could be specific actions. I think this is also policy. In other words, just and what she is saying, and I heard this today from other people too, is we can't make decisions that require buy-in from Upcountry without consulting with them, and vice versa.
Good point.
I agree that's an action, but also there was a policy, the one in blue on the bottom that you had not voted on. You had kind of discussed discourage beach nourishment and key growing projects to protect ocean water quality. I don't know if that was just something you wanted to let go, or if somebody wanted to make a motion.
We did adopt it. We did not. Oh. I thought okay, but now it's proposed. Back up again. Okay. So, does anyone want to see this in the plan? Daniel? Is there a second? Okay, I find that motion dies. Okay, we do have this one about requiring coordination between South Maui and Upcountry groups in discussing planning and managing the South Maui watershed. Moved by Pereira. Is there a second? Second by Toa. Okay.
Can you repeat the language?
Require coordination between South Maui and Upcountry groups in discussing, planning, and managing the South Maui watershed. And some people are saying there's no such thing as the South Maui watershed. On the other hand, we do have a Southwest Maui watershed plan. So this goes back to the Aberqua versus planning district. Just make sure we discuss in the very beginning. It is one of the things I wonder about. If we adopt things in our plan, but they require buy-in from our country, which parts does the planning department consult. So what's the guideline there? There's no process for that. There's no instruction.
Since we can't control Upcountry, what do we say? Encourage.
I just want to add that as we go through this process, we're realizing that there are things such as this that would be really appropriate for the Maui Island plan. And so we are planning to start working on that one soon because we're seeing things like this that are more for the island in general. So we're trying to get those kind of things in that plan.
I'll amend my motion to say encourage coordination.
So we made a motion. Is that made the original motion? Yeah. Oh, that's it. Okay. So you and you're accepting the amendment. Discussion. Any objections to encourage coordination between? It's on the screen. Daniel? I'm asking if there are any objections. Brennan?
I can comment.
She can.
if you're going to try to reconnect with the guys outside, still in cooler, right? Unless I just screw everything up. You know what I mean, right? I mean, it's not Maui, down here. Actually, it's, so we go with that designation. Because now we're talking cooler, right?
How about connecting the worship? And so, you say the whole proposal now.
I think what Dan was saying, like Kula and Honolulu watersheds.
You accept that as a, okay, everybody accepts that. Who was the second? Go on, yeah, you accept that too? That makes perfect sense to me. Any objections? And we adopt this additional policy. And as far as I can tell, that concludes the policy proposals. Daniel?
One of the fires, I don't know if it's an action or policy. The suggestion was to acquire available wetlands. That'd be an action or a policy.
It could be policy if you acquired them when it was going to be developed, but it's more of an action to tell the county to do
And the context was that this fire said that there are wetlands that are available now. I mean, that could be acquired by the county. Would that make, that was the context.
So that should be an action.
Okay, so we're a little bit past 8:30. We finished the policies. We've not started on the actions yet.
I just have one more thing to say. I want to thank Jordan Molina for helping us out with all this. He's not the director of wastewater, but he still could answer all your questions. Those are the Department of Environmental Management, which is a completely separate department. But thank you, Jordan, for being helpful in that other side of another department. Thank you.
Okay, call the meeting closed at 8:35 p.m.
Grab off the ship and threw from the ship and put it in the front of the house. Implementing action.
Oh, sure. No, I appreciate you calling on me. No, it's a complicated matter, so I hope I help.